Saad al-Hariri, Lebanese Prime Minister, it's really great to have you on our show. Welcome.
Thank you.
So you've been on a world tour of sorts. You went to Washington, you went to Paris, securing military and financial aid, and now that trip brings you to Moscow. What exactly do you hope Russia can do for Lebanon?
Russia is playing a political role, a big political role in the region. And I believe that, Lebanon is suffering from refugees, from the conflict that is happening in Syria, in Iraq. And I think my first aim is to try to alienate Lebanon from any consequences that are happening in Syria and other places. Russia also, we've had a very good political relationship with Russia, and I would like also this relationship economically to develop. So far, we haven't had, economic level of, enhancement like our political, relationship. So now I aim to enhance this relationship economically. At the same time, we believe that we should also try to do some, work with the military here in Russia, because we face the same problem. Terrorism is everywhere, and we want to face that kind of terrorism with our allies.
I understand about the economic ties, but obviously today, with the world that we're living, all the focus is on the military aid. So why the drive for the military assistance from all three very different sources? Why now?
Well, Lebanon has faced a battle just a few weeks ago against ISIS. We fear that, this is going to be a long fight against ISIS. And we believe that enhancing our military capabilities is very important. We've had very good programs with the American Army. We've also had some good programs with the French, and we believe in the history we've had a lot of equipment from Russia. So we need to get some much more modern weapons for the Lebanese armed forces and our security forces. This fight is something that we need to face, and we need to face it with the best technology.
So you mentioned recent battle, but Lebanese Army has actually been very victorious recently in the fight against ISIS in Ras Baalbek.
Yes.
Do you feel right now that you can maybe take upon a more proactive role when it comes to fighting ISIS and contribute to the coalition and their fight against ISIS, or are you going to limit yourself to the Lebanese territory?
First of all, I want to secure my territories. I want to make sure that Lebanon is protected. We are already, we have a lot of relationship with the, Russian intelligence, other intelligence. We are, doing our efforts with cooperation, with whatever information that we have, and expertise. We, in Lebanon, we have excelled, alhamdulillah, for catching those terrorists before doing anything. In the past 3 years, we haven't had any accident. We've been able to capture them before any results from their side, and this is something that we pride ourselves with. We would like to continue on this venue. In order to do so, we need some technology to continue doing what we're doing, and this cooperation has also helped in catching a lot of terrorists around the world. For instance, a month back, we were able to capture some terrorists that were planning to do something on some airline in Lebanon.
Current American president has blamed his predecessor, Barack Obama, for being inactive in the Middle East. Can you see the difference in the American approach now, and what do you, as the Lebanese Prime Minister, expect from Trump? How can he change or help the Middle East?
I think the results are obvious. What you see in Iraq, what you see in Syria today, the fight against ISIS is much more focused, much more cooperative between the nations that are fighting ISIS. And we see that ISIS is losing battleground everywhere in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon. We hope that the focus on this issue is try to diminish or exterminate ISIS. But the real problem we believe also is, why is there ISIS? what's the reason ISIS is in Iraq, why the reason you have ISIS in Syria. And I believe my concern is, you know, we fought, all of us, Al-Qaeda in Iraq and everywhere in the world. But the real reason of why this kind of organization exists is the problem. In Iraq, if they don't forge a real partnership between all sects, I believe that my concern, and even in Syria, my concern is you might fight this kind of groups, but if you don't have real partnership, real political solution with long-term, you know, partnership between the people, then this is not the solution. Unless you forge these partnerships, unless people see that, you know, there is no difference between a Syrian and another, then my concern is you will have something worse than ISIS. The important thing is to have a viable political solution that everybody is happy with.
You know, I was speaking not too long ago to another great Lebanese man, Tלעב, and when we were speaking about the Syrian war, he said, you know, the Lebanese way out of its own civil war could serve as an example for Syria. Mm-hmm. Do you feel maybe the power-sharing agreements, decentralization, that could work in Syria like it did in your country?
I believe, you know, a partnership is important to forge. I think the Lebanese solution is quite effective. We were able to keep the stability, especially in times where we saw destruction all around us in Libya and Syria and Iraq. I think it could be a solution, but it's up to the Syrians. You know, in the end of the day, we Lebanese sat on one table and we agreed to stop the war, the civil war. But later on, we have to build the trust and the coalitions and the reconciliation, and this is something very hard to be done. And I think with the encouragement or with what's happening now between the Americans, the Russians, the Turks, the Saudis, the Iranians, I think this is important.
But, I mean, obviously a lot of people bring up the example of your country, Lebanon, because it has been torn by the civil war, and it is the best example of how after the civil war you can coexist within each other.
Absolutely.
But how do you hammer out a united line when it comes to Assad? Because like you've said, you are opposing Assad, Michel Aoun is supporting him, Speaker of the Parliament is somewhat friendly towards Damascus. How do you come up with a common line?
No, we don't come up with a common line. We decide to alienate Lebanon from all these political and strategic decisions. And we say that we were trying to become like a Switzerland in a way, where we don't want to involve ourselves in those quarrels and safeguard the benefit of the country.
You want to be directly involved in the peacemaking process?
No, we would like to what's important for us is the return of the refugees. And I believe today you have almost 8 million or 9 million Syrian refugees around the world. And I think any political solution that does not look at this issue specifically is a solution that is not going to fly. I think the importance is to make sure that these refugees go back to Syria, to safe places. I think, and they should be part of the process. Anything short of that is not going to be viable as a political solution.
But do you feel like your government is ready to send the refugees back to Syria because the conditions in Syria now are safe enough, or is it the case of Lebanon has its limits?
No, Lebanon has its limits, first of all, but we are bound with all international, resolutions and human rights. We believe that if they are to go back to Syria, they need to go back to a safe zone, safe areas that the United Nations approves, that a political solution includes the safe return of those refugees.
So you're not kicking them out, you're just going to wait till the moment is right. I read in an interview to Politico, you have said that if you want to solve the issue of Syria, that's your quote, you got to talk to the Russians. I know you made it clear that you don't want to be directly involved in a peacemaking process when it comes to Syria, but Yet your position and the position of Russia differ on key issues when it comes to Syria. Can there be common ground between Lebanon and Russia when it comes to that civil war?
Absolutely. I think, you know, what's important to see is today that you have this, these almost safe zone areas, or they call it now where they have less fighting in southern part of Syria. I think these the reason these areas exist because there is real talks between the Americans and the Russians and different political parties or countries like Turkey, like Jordan, like Iran, like Saudi Arabia. So if this is a serious political solution, that is, or this is a part of the solution that will preparation for the solution to come. And I think these areas are being developed in all parts of Syria. We agree on them. We encourage them because you see less fighting, less killing, and this is something that would, you know, enhance or maybe, you know, set up the road towards a political solution.
So you brought up the three branches of your government, and you differ on things, but you know you don't take it out in the public. You deal with it behind the scenes, and it's true that you know the political system in Lebanon is spectacular in terms of how you can allocate same amount of power to each of the main religion branches.
Absolutely.
And it has worked very well after the devastating civil war. But do you sometimes feel like maybe this system needs revamping because it hinders decision making? Or do you think like shaking up things will be too dangerous right now?
No, you see, what we need to understand about Lebanon is after the assassination of Hariri, the Lebanese went through a learning process. Beforehand, you had the Syrian army inside Lebanon till 2005. And it was by proxy, the Syrians were, you know, somehow controlling Lebanon. This is the first time after, you know, the Syrians pulled from Lebanon, the Syrian regime pulled from Lebanon. The first time that after the civil war, the Lebanese are trying to manage their country by themselves. So we've had few experiences. An experience where a part of the country was trying to run the country by themselves. It didn't work. Then another time where we tried to unify our efforts to run the country. Then another 8th of March tried to run the country by themselves. And I think the system today, with this consensus government, is trying to like balance the constitution that we have.
You also said recently that right now you're focused on improving the situation between Qatar and Saudi Arabia. What can Lebanon do here? I mean, it's kind of far.
You know, I think there is a dialogue that Kuwait is trying to lead. I believe this dialogue is important for the Gulf. We decided not to get involved directly because we do not, you know, the differences that they have between each other is they know it much better than we do. So we will, you know, stay, you know, far away from this problem. But we encourage all the time a dialogue that the Kuwaitis are trying to lead.
So you're Switzerland in that?
I'm trying to be as Switzerland as I can be.
But Lebanese government has been investing in Iraqi Kurdistan, right? And now we have the referendum of independence that's approaching. So I wonder, what will your position be vis-a-vis a possible independent Kurdish state?
We believe that, you know, this is something between the Iraqis. We believe that a unified Iraq is far better for the Iraq. A unified Syria is far better for Syria. We believe, you know, this notion of dividing of countries like this will only serve to minimize the capacity of the Iraqis as a country. Or I believe the Kurds and the Arabs in Iraq can work together, can come to a conclusion where, you know, the Kurds feel they have their own autonomy one way or the other. Like we try sometimes in Lebanon. I think dividing countries is only, fueling the conflict in the region. I believe a unified Iraq is the solution.
I've heard you say many times that Hezbollah is not the main force in Lebanon. It's certainly not the main player. It's not controlling the country. And now it's heavily involved in the Syrian war. Is it easier to deal with them now that they're distracted with their pro-Assad, anti-ISIS campaign?
I think, we should understand that Assad regime has tried to survive all these years. And the only reason he did survive is because of Russia. Maybe there are other players playing with the regime. But the main force that was able to stabilize Syria was the policy that Russia took towards, towards the regime, towards, fighting ISIS and all of that. I think, Hezbollah's role, my position, we disagree with it. But at the same time, the main reason today there is Bashar al-Assad is because Russia took the position it took.
But you just come back from America, and you've stated many times that Lebanese Army has nothing to do with Hezbollah. It's completely independent. Are you, though, worried that maybe an American congressman not make a difference between Hezbollah and the Lebanese Army, not do their research?
No, there's, it's a propaganda war. In some places we have the Israeli lobbies that go and try to put this idea that the Lebanese army is controlled by Hezbollah, and it's not. This is not.
We know it's not. Yeah. But are you worried about the Americans maybe cutting aid because they don't understand the situation on the ground?
We've had long discussions with the American administration and Congress and Senate, and I believe that we made some success. I believe that we should keep on this, campaign in showing that what really Lebanon is. We just fought a war against ISIS, and Hezbollah wasn't in it. So, Israel will always try to put Lebanon as a proxy, but we're no proxy for anyone.
Talking about Israel, you've sent a request to the United Nations to facilitate the signing of the truce between Lebanon and Israel because officially the two countries are still at war. Why hasn't it been signed yet? What's coming in a way? What's blocking it?
We need to stop the hostilities between the two countries. After the war, there was a period where we need to move actually to the cessation of hostilities and other parts of this agreement supposed to be implemented. Unfortunately, Israel keeps on barging into Lebanese airspace, Lebanese maritime borders, and sometimes we find some cameras hidden somewhere in Lebanon implanted by the Israelis, and this is something that needs to stop. We believe that we've gone a long way. If you look at in 2006, we had so many different border, different position that we thought that this is ours and the Israelis thought that they were theirs. Now we came down to 13 points, and now we still have the maritime quarrel between us and Israel. With this new administration in the United States, there is engagement on these issues, and I believe that we can reach certain agreements.
So now Israel is saying that Hamas is establishing a foothold in Lebanon. Are there any truth to these claims?
No. I think Israel just wants to put Lebanon as the evil, country, and I think we all know what Israel is doing.
It's also holding its largest military drill in 20 years right next to your border, simulating a repeat of 2006 Lebanon-Israel war. Are you concerned? Are you worried? Or is this just a technical maneuver and nothing to be worried about?
No, I'm worried about the campaign or the propaganda that Israel is trying to put Lebanon, or to put Lebanon as a country that is not in control of its army and security forces. We understand, but what we want in Lebanon is the implementation of Resolution 1701 to the dot. We are ready to go all the way on this issue. All the political parties are ready in Lebanon. Is Israel ready? The problem is Israel throws all these, this kind of campaign on Lebanon, but yet when you come really on the ground and try to implement the resolution, they will not.
So what really gets on your nerves, basically, is the propaganda more than anything else, but it's not the real threat that could be another war between the two countries. I'm concerned because Israel's rhetoric on the campaign or on this propaganda has been heightening ever since. And I think they need to understand that, we don't want war. I don't think they want war, so it's better not to instigate. And the best way to move away from war is actually to implement things on the ground. So if we have 13 border points that we have still different opinions about it, there is a tripartite between us and the United Nations and Israel, meetings monthly. We need to resolve these issues at once. We need to take the pretext of any war away from everybody and implement and see how we move to a full cessation of hostilities between us and them. Prime Minister, you are no stranger to threats. Your father tragically died in a political assassination. You also had reasons for a while to be out of Lebanon. Have things changed? Do you feel like this threat is in the past, or now that you're Prime Minister, you're even in more danger?
I think I've gathered more enemies these days, with ISIS and Al-Qaeda and all of these political groups. But I think, my security are doing their job, and it's a part of the job. It comes with it in this part of our region. We have to be careful, but it's there. Just manage it.
Well, we wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you.
And hopefully you'll come back to Russia again soon.
Hopefully.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Thank you.